Jawaharlal Nehru is remembered as a towering figure in 20th century world history, not merely as the first Prime Minister of independent India, but as a philosopher-politician whose ideas shaped the ethos of an emerging nation. A man of letters, a freedom fighter, an architect of democratic institutions, and a staunch secularist, Nehru helped lay the foundations of modern India. His leadership during the most formative years of the Republic was instrumental in transitioning India from colonial subjugation to sovereign self-rule, navigating social, political, and economic turbulence with a blend of idealism and realism. Born on 14th November 1889, Nehru belonged to a wealthy and influential Kashmiri Pandit family based in Allahabad, now known as Prayagraj. His father, Motilal Nehru, was a distinguished lawyer and an early leader of the Indian National Congress. Jawaharlal grew up in a world of privilege, surrounded by English tutors, a private laboratory, and an early exposure to both Indian culture and British imperial attitudes. He was sent to England at the age of 15 to study at Harrow, followed by Trinity College, Cambridge, where he studied natural sciences. Nehru was later called to the bar at the Inner Temple, London, in 1912. During his time in Britain, he came into contact with liberal and socialist ideologies, including Fabianism, which profoundly shaped his worldview. Yet, despite his elite Western education, Nehru developed a deep sense of identification with the Indian masses, a transformation triggered by his return to India and later solidified through his involvement in the nationalist struggle. Nehru's early political life was one of tension and transformation. Though he initially hesitated to jump into politics, his exposure to the inequities of colonial rule drew him toward the nationalist movement. The turning point came with his first meeting with Mahatma Gandhi in 1916, whose philosophy of non-violent resistance, or satyagraha, and moral leadership captivated Nehru. Nehru joined the Indian National Congress, participating actively in movements such as the non-cooperation movement from 1920 to 22, the civil disobedience movement in 1930, and the Quit India movement in 1942. He was arrested multiple times and spent a total of over 9 years in British prisons. His incarceration provided time for introspection and writing, most notably his autobiographical work, An Autobiography in 1936, and the literary masterpiece, The Discovery of India in 1944, which remains a cornerstone in Indian political literature. He was a key proponent of Purna Swaraj, complete independence from British rule, and was appointed Congress President in 1929, the same year that independence was formally adopted as the party's goal. When India gained independence on 15th August 1947, Nehru became the first Prime Minister of India, a position he held until his death in 1964. The challenges before him were immense post-partition violence, the integration of princely states, food shortages, refugee rehabilitation, and communal unrest. Nehru was a committed Democrat. Under his leadership, India adopted a parliamentary democracy, ensuring universal adult suffrage, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and secularism as cornerstones of the new state. He respected institutions and encouraged healthy political opposition, even though Congress held overwhelming majorities. The framing of the Indian Constitution in 1950, in which Nehru played a key role, created a legal and institutional framework that has endured for decades. Nehru believed deeply in the role of the state in economic development. Drawing from socialist models, he implemented a mixed economy guided by 5-year plans aimed at industrialization, self-sufficiency, and equitable growth. His government prioritized sectors like heavy industry, energy, transport, and agriculture, while also emphasizing the public sector. Institutions like the Planning Commission, IITs, AIMs, Bhabha Atomic Research Centre, and Indian Space Research Organisation trace their origins to Nehru's vision of a scientific, temperament-driven India. Yet the license Raj that emerged from these centralized policies later came under criticism for promoting inefficiency, red tape, and corruption, a consequence Nehru likely underestimated. Nehru's foreign policy was shaped by India's unique geopolitical position in the early Cold War era. He championed non-alignment, resisting alignment with either the US-led Western Bloc or the Soviet bloc. This policy was formalized through the non-aligned movement in 1961 alongside Josip Broz Tito of Yugoslavia, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, and Sukarno of Indonesia. Nehru was an outspoken advocate of decolonization, disarmament, and peaceful coexistence. He played a key role in supporting anti-apartheid movements in Africa and supported newly independent nations in Asia and Africa. However, his foreign policy was idealistic to a fault. His greatest foreign policy failure came with the 1962 Sino-Indian War, where India's unprepared military suffered a humiliating defeat against Chinese forces. The incident marked the collapse of the Hindi-Chini Bhai dream and deeply impacted Nehru personally. Nehru was deeply secular, believing that religion and politics must remain separate in a modern democracy. He upheld minority rights and fought against communalism, warning early on of the dangers posed by religious extremism. He supported women's emancipation, education, scientific inquiry, and land reforms. He was also a passionate writer and historian. In addition to the discovery of India, he penned Letters from a Father to His Daughter, a book of letters to his daughter Indira Gandhi, who would later become Prime Minister herself. These works are not just expressions of affection, but also reflections of Nehru's pedagogic and philosophical temperament. No analysis of Nehru would be complete without recognizing the criticisms of his policies. His centralized economic planning laid the foundation for inefficiencies that later hampered growth. His foreign policy was seen by some as naive, particularly his handling of China. His insistence on non-alignment arguably denied India access to military and economic alliances that could have strengthened its position. However, many of these criticisms are tempered by the fact that Nehru was navigating uncharted waters. India was a newly born nation with enormous challenges, and Nehru had to build institutions from scratch. Nehru died on 27 May 1964. Shortly after suffering a third stroke, his death marked the end of an era. Despite his flaws and miscalculations, Nehru left behind a democratic, secular, and progressive India. Institutions he built and values he championed continue to form the bedrock of India's identity. Even today, India celebrates Children's Day on his birthday, 14th November, a tribute to his love for children and belief in the power of education and youth to shape the future. Jawaharlal Nehru was not just a political leader, he was a civilizational architect. A blend of East and West, tradition and modernity, idealism and pragmatism, Nehru embodied the spirit of India in transition. He was a complex man, visionary yet flawed, charismatic yet reserved, elite yet egalitarian. His contribution to India is immeasurable, not simply in what he did, but in what he prevented. At a time when many post-colonial nations slid into dictatorship, Nehru ensured that India remained a democracy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Blistering History.